Jonathan Harrington stood in front of the ornate mirror in his sprawling penthouse atop Harrington Tower, adjusting the crisp edges of his bow tie. The New Year's Eve fireworks had not yet begun, but the city below was already aglow with flashes of colour. For a moment Jonathan stared at his own reflection. Ruggedly handsome at 42, with silvering hair at the temples, he looked every inch the self-made billionaire. Yet behind that confident facade lay a swirl of guilt and uncertainty he could not quite push away. His wife, Eleanor, was across the suite in her dressing room. He could hear muffled music playing from her phone, likely classical, and the rustle of her gown as she prepared for the Harrington Foundation's New Year's charity gala. The air felt thick, charged with tension. Jonathan's throat tightened as he thought of Selina, the woman who haunted him every waking moment for the last 6 months. This was supposed to be a night of celebration, a fresh start. Instead, he felt trapped between duty, secrets, and a longing he couldn't fully deny. Many claimed Jonathan Harrington had it all. He had grown up in a working-class family, risen through the ranks of investment banking, and later launched a tech empire that revolutionized data security across the globe. His marriage to Eleanor, a refined art historian from a prominent East Coast family, had been celebrated in society pages nationwide. They embodied New York City's power couple, poised, philanthropic, and envied. But behind the gleaming press photos lay two people who rarely truly saw one another anymore. The double doors to the suite opened with a flourish, and Eleanor swept in. Her dress was a deep emerald green, a nod to the Harrington Foundation's signature color scheme. A wave of perfume wafted in with her, the scent somehow both comforting and daunting. She was tall, poised and elegant, with chestnut hair pinned into a stylish chignon. "You're still not ready?" she asked, her voice steady but tinted with mild exasperation. "We're supposed to welcome guests in half an hour." Jonathan forced a smile. "Just gathering my thoughts," he replied. "It's an important night for the Foundation." Eleanor's expression softened. She stepped toward him, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "We'll make a difference," she said, "and ring in the new year with a new sense of purpose, right?" Jonathan swallowed hard, hearing the subtext. Over the past year, their marriage had grown cold. Eleanor had insisted on counseling, on taking a sabbatical together, but Jonathan had always found reasons to avoid it: business expansions, new investment rounds, an endless list of philanthropic commitments. Deep down, he wondered if he'd avoided counseling because he feared facing the truth, that a chasm had formed between them, one that might no longer be bridged. Still, he mustered warmth in his gaze. "Yes," he whispered, "a new sense of purpose." As they walked out of the penthouse side by side, Jonathan couldn't help but glance at his phone. Selina's face hovered in his mind. If only he had the courage to end it. But even that thought made his heart ache. It wasn't merely lust. There was an emotional bond he couldn't fully deny. Or so he told himself. Tonight, everything would be tested. Little did Jonathan know that this New Year's Eve would set off a chain of events, leading him to a stark confrontation with fate, love, and the secrets that could upend his very existence. The Harrington Foundation's New Year's Gala was an annual highlight of the city's philanthropic calendar. An exclusive guest list spilled into the grand ballroom of the Harrington Hotel, enveloped by towering floral arrangements, flickering candlelight, and soft jazz music drifting from a live band. From old money families to tech entrepreneurs, from Hollywood celebrities to international artists, everyone came to pay tribute to the Harringtons' charitable cause. Eleanor moved through the crowd with natural grace, greeting luminaries, philanthropic partners, and old family friends. Jonathan remained at her side initially, exchanging pleasantries with guests and smiling for the cameras, but his mind strayed. His heart pounded every time he glimpsed movement at the periphery of the room, worried he might see Selina. She had insisted she would come late to avoid drawing too much attention. He had tried to persuade her otherwise, or perhaps dissuade her from coming at all, but it was no use. Selina had a ticket, courtesy of Jonathan's private invitation. At the champagne station by a grand ice sculpture, Jonathan spotted an old friend, Harold Cunningham, an influential attorney known for championing social reforms. The two men embraced in a brief, warm hug. "I thought I'd find you making the rounds," Harold teased. "Any big announcements tonight? A new donation? A new product launch?" Jonathan forced a laugh. "You know me too well. We'll have something up on the screens at midnight. But let's just say it's a new approach to philanthropic microfinancing." Before Harold could inquire further, Jonathan's gaze flickered across the room, where the crowd parted just enough for him to see a woman in a shimmering silver gown, Selina. She was breathtakingly beautiful, her raven hair cascading over her shoulders, lips painted a deep red. She stood alone near a wall, scanning the crowd as if searching for him. Jonathan's stomach clenched with both excitement and dread. "Ah," Harold said, following Jonathan's eyes. "A friend of yours, perhaps?" Jonathan stiffened. "An acquaintance," he replied, struggling to keep his tone casual. "We partnered on a project out west a while back." Harold nodded, though a hint of curiosity passed across his features. "Well, I'll let you get back to your acquaintances. I have to track down your wife. She promised to introduce me to a curator from the Met." Jonathan gave a weak smile as Harold drifted away. From across the room, Selina finally caught his eye. She moved gracefully, shoulders back, hips swaying. Each step was a silent reminder of everything Jonathan risked losing. He slipped away, finding a route past clusters of guests and slipping behind a curtain that led to a side corridor. Within moments, Selina followed him. In that half-lit hallway, with music still audible but distant, they confronted each other. "John," Selina said softly, her voice breathy with anticipation, "you look uneasy." He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "I told you not to come. It's too risky." Selina's eyes flashed with hurt. "Too late. I'm here, and you invited me. Besides, I'm tired of lurking in the shadows. We agreed we'd figure this out." He pressed his back against the corridor's wall, wanting to hold her but terrified someone might see them. "We'll talk after midnight," he whispered, looking around. "There's a private suite upstairs. I booked it under the Foundation's name so no one would suspect." A swirl of conflicting emotion crossed Selina's face, sorrow, longing, defiance. "Fine," she said. "I'll wait until after midnight, but don't make me wait alone. I can't stand being just another face in your crowd." Jonathan reached for her hand. "You're not just another face. You know that." Before they could say more, distant footsteps echoed in the corridor. Selina withdrew into the shadows. Jonathan stepped forward as if to re-enter the ballroom. The footsteps drew closer. Eleanor appeared, her gaze flitting between them with mild curiosity. "There you are," Eleanor said to Jonathan, then turned to Selina with a polite smile. "I'm Eleanor Harrington. I don't believe we've been introduced." Selina's cheeks colored, but she managed a polite greeting. Selina Price. Selina Price. Eleanor took the name in, as though trying to place it. "Are you part of the Redwood Tech Initiative that Jonathan's been championing?" Selina nodded, a nervous tremor in her voice. "In a manner of speaking, yes. We oversee some real estate projects together." Eleanor's eyes flicked to Jonathan with a hint of inquiry, but she didn't press. "I see. Well, I hope you enjoy yourself tonight. The Foundation is launching something big at midnight. I'd love to hear your thoughts afterward." "I'd be honored, Mrs. Harrington," Selina replied, forcing a smile. The moment was taut, as though the three of them hovered on the brink of something unspeakable. Jonathan's heart hammered. He could only hope no one noticed the tension swirling just beneath the surface. Little did he know, the worst was yet to come. As the evening wore on, the grand ballroom filled with laughter, music, and the clink of champagne glasses. Speeches were made, auction items introduced, and large pledges announced. Eleanor took her turn on stage, explaining how the funds would be used for educational programs for underprivileged communities. Her passion shone through, igniting applause from every corner of the ballroom. Jonathan stood by the stage, observing his wife. Despite the widening distance between them, he still admired her intellect and grace. A pang of guilt struck him as he spotted Selina at a nearby table, her eyes lingering on him. He realized how precarious his position was, caught between two worlds that could collide at any moment. A lull in the program allowed him a chance to slip away. He found himself near one of the decorative alcoves, gazing at the city lights through a towering window. The reflection of shimmering chandeliers danced on the glass. Memories of his youth flitted across his mind. Nights spent studying under a single lamp in his cramped bedroom, vowing to build something grander for himself and for his future. He had dreamed big, worked tirelessly, and now had wealth beyond imagination. But at what cost? "Quite a view, isn't it?" came a familiar voice. He turned to see Elon Musk standing just a few feet away, briefly in New York for a round of fundraising for his new satellite program. Jonathan had met him at a tech summit earlier that year. Jonathan shook his hand. "Didn't expect you in town tonight. Thought you'd be launching something into orbit by now." Elon chuckled. "No rockets this week. Heard about your event, decided to swing by." "Besides," he said, his eyes roaming the glittering crowd, "New Year's Eve in New York is something special." Jonathan forced a grin. "It certainly is." They chatted for a few minutes, exchanging polite banter about technology, philanthropy, and the next big frontier. But Jonathan was distracted, scanning the crowd for any sign of Selina or Eleanor. He couldn't help but wonder how he had ended up conversing with a visionary entrepreneur while his personal life threatened to unravel. Eventually, Elon excused himself to speak to a pair of potential investors, and Jonathan was once again alone. He stepped away, leaning against a marble column and glancing at the clock. 11:30. In just 30 minutes, the new year and the moment of truth would arrive. That moment found him again. Selina approached with careful, measured steps, her silver gown catching the light. "Can you slip away for a moment?" she asked quietly. Her eyes darted around, ensuring no one was watching. "What about midnight?" he replied. "I can't wait that long." "You said there's a private suite upstairs. Let's talk now." He hesitated, then nodded. Without drawing attention, they wove through the crowd. Jonathan guided her to the elevator reserved for VIP guests and foundation staff. The ride up to the 20th floor was eerily silent. The tension between them lay heavy, unspoken but palpable. In the suite, a lavish space adorned with plush furniture, gold accents, and sweeping views, Selina finally let her composure crack. "I'm tired of being a secret," she said, voice trembling. "I have feelings too. You said you loved me." Jonathan's jaw clenched. "I do, but you know what's at stake. My marriage, my reputation." "Then leave her," Selina demanded. "If you can't, then I'll leave, and don't ever call me again." Tears lined her eyes. He reached for her, feeling torn apart by the reality he had created. "I can't just end a 13-year marriage out of the blue, especially not tonight. This gala, our donors, my entire life is tangled with Eleanor's." Selina stepped back, arms folded. "So it's about your public image then? Are you staying with her because you love her, or because you're afraid of what people will think?" Her words cut him. In truth, he wasn't sure what love meant anymore. He cared for Eleanor, respected her deeply, and he had once believed their bond unbreakable. But time had shown them how fragile relationships could be. And yet, the thought of losing Selina tightened his chest. She continued, voice growing stronger with each syllable. "I deserve better than hidden hallway meetings and stolen kisses. If I mean something to you, prove it. Otherwise, let me go." He looked at her, wishing he could freeze time, wishing he hadn't allowed this affair to start at all. "Selina," he whispered, stepping closer. "After midnight, let's meet back here. I promise one way or another, I'll give you clarity." Her lips parted as if to speak again, but in that moment, Jonathan's phone buzzed in his pocket. He fished it out and saw Eleanor's name. A wave of anxiety swept over him. "Hello?" he answered, trying to steady his voice. "Jonathan, we're about to start the countdown." "Where are you?" Eleanor sounded calm, but he detected a note of stress beneath the veneer. "I'm on my way," he managed. He ended the call and looked at Selina. No more words were necessary. They both knew the midnight countdown was upon them. With solemn resolve, Jonathan hurried from the suite, leaving Selina behind, with tears brimming in her eyes. In the elevator descending to the ballroom, Jonathan felt a suffocating heaviness in his chest. Something in the air spoke of imminent catastrophe. He could no longer ignore the sense that time was running out, not just on the year, but on the life he had tried to stitch together with secrets and half-truths. Back in the grand ballroom, an electrifying energy buzzed in the air. A countdown clock flashed on massive screens, the seconds ticking toward midnight. Eleanor stood at the center of the stage, poised with a microphone, a picture of elegance and composure. The sea of guests, over 500 strong, waited eagerly to toast the new year. Jonathan rushed to join her, slipping onto the stage. He offered a quick apology and a reassuring squeeze of her hand, which she returned with faint relief. Cameras flashed, capturing the glamorous couple side by side. 10, 9, 8. The crowd chanted, glasses lifted, confetti cannons primed. 7, 6, 5. The band struck up a festive tune, and Jonathan felt Eleanor's hand tremble in his. 4, 3, 2, 1. At midnight strike, the ballroom erupted in cheers, horns, and shimmering confetti. Jonathan forced himself to kiss Eleanor lightly on the lips, mindful of the cameras. She smiled at him, though something in her eyes hinted at a deep vulnerability. Eleanor lifted her microphone, voice echoing through the hall. "Thank you all for being here as we start this new year together. The Harrington Foundation is thrilled to announce a groundbreaking initiative, microfinance scholarships for youth in underserved communities nationwide. This is our resolution for the year, to bridge economic gaps and restore hope where it's needed most." Thunderous applause filled the room. Photographers scrambled for shots. Jonathan stood at Eleanor's side, outwardly beaming. But inside, he thought of Selina upstairs in the suite, awaiting his decision. His stomach churned with the weight of the promise he'd made. When the applause died down and the music resumed, Jonathan excused himself under the guise of business. He navigated the jubilant crowd, returning handshakes and nods, but never lingering long. Slipping back into the VIP elevator, he felt like a man ascending the gallows rather than going to see his lover. The suite door clicked open, revealing Selina seated on a velvet sofa, arms wrapped around her knees. "It's midnight," she said, voice uneven. "Happy New Year." His throat felt parched. "Selina, Then the phone in his pocket buzzed again. This time it wasn't Eleanor. It was a name he barely recognized, but the area code was from Boston Eleanor's extended family's city. Something in his gut twisted as he answered. A frantic voice, someone calling on behalf of the hospital, explaining that Margaret Benson, Eleanor's favorite aunt, had collapsed. They had found Jonathan's number in a shared emergency contact file. He froze. What happened? The voice explained that Margaret had suffered a severe stroke. Doctors weren't sure if she'd pull through. They needed Eleanor to be notified immediately. Selina watched Jonathan's expression shift from shock to devastation. "What is it?" she asked, concerned. "Eleanor's aunt. She's very ill. I have to go find Eleanor." He ran a trembling hand through his hair. "Selina, I'll come back. Just give me an hour. I can't leave her like this." Selina's eyes softened. "Of course, go," she whispered, her momentary anger overshadowed by empathy. "She's your family." Jonathan nodded, guilt flooding him once more. Family was complicated, especially tonight, and he was standing at the nexus of it all. Back at the ballroom, Eleanor stood with a small group of donors, trying to maintain her composure. The phone call from the Boston hospital had reached her moments earlier, and her face was chalk white. Jonathan found her trembling, tears threatening to escape her usually composed demeanor. "She's in a coma," Eleanor said in a hushed tone. "They don't know if she'll make it through the night." "I'm so sorry," Jonathan replied, gently guiding her away from prying eyes. "We need to head to Boston immediately." Eleanor nodded. "Yes, I'll have my assistant book a flight. But Jonathan, this gala, these donors—" "Forget the gala," he said firmly. "Your aunt needs us." For the first time in months, Jonathan's protective instinct toward Eleanor surged to the forefront. As broken as their marriage might have been, he still cared deeply for her well-being. He held her hand as they left the ballroom, ducking into a quieter corridor to make travel arrangements. Moments later, Harold Cunningham spotted them. "Is everything all right?" Jonathan quickly relayed the situation. Harold promised he would handle the rest of the night's event, ensuring the donors' needs were met. Eleanor, her voice quavering, expressed her gratitude. In the flurry of phone calls and logistics, Jonathan momentarily forgot about Selina waiting in the suite upstairs. His only goal was to get Eleanor out of New York and on a plane to Boston. By 1 a.m. they were in the back of a limousine, weaving through festive streets clogged with revelers. Eleanor stared out the window, tears glimmering. "Thank you for coming with me," she murmured, turning to Jonathan. "I know we've been distant, but tonight I can't do this alone." He forced a reassuring nod. "We're still a team. Always." The words left a bitter taste. Had he meant them? In that moment, he believed so. He was raised to honor family commitments, and no matter how tangled his personal life had become, he wouldn't abandon Eleanor at such a crucial moment. Yet a gnawing guilt clung to him. He needed to call Selina to explain. But as they arrived at the private airstrip, the reality of their sudden departure overtook everything else. Inside the cabin of the Harrington jet, Jonathan sent Selina a flurry of texts. "John, I had to leave with Eleanor. Family emergency. I'm sorry. I'll call you as soon as I can." He stared at his phone, waiting for a response. None came. In Boston, the hospital corridors were stark, fluorescent lights casting a harsh glow. Margaret Benson lay in the ICU, machines beeping steadily. Eleanor's father, Robert Benson, and a few other relatives were already there, pale-faced and grim. When Eleanor entered, she broke down, quietly sobbing by her aunt's bedside. Jonathan stood behind her, resting a hand on her shoulder. A family cousin, Genevieve, approached. She was a distant relative on Eleanor's mother's side, someone Jonathan had seen only at large family gatherings. She had piercing green eyes, a sharp intellect, and carried herself with quiet authority. Jonathan barely recalled meeting her once or twice, but her presence was oddly calming for Eleanor, who clutched Genevieve's hand. "I wish it were under better circumstances," Genevieve said softly, looking at Jonathan. "Eleanor needs all the support she can get." Jonathan nodded. "We'll do what we can." In the hours that followed, doctors delivered updates. Margaret's condition was dire. The stroke was severe, and her chances of recovery diminished with each passing moment. At dawn, Eleanor and Jonathan settled into chairs in the waiting area, shoulders slumped in exhaustion. As the morning light spilled through the hospital windows, a new arrival appeared, someone Jonathan never expected to see here, Selina. She stepped into the corridor tentatively, scanning for a familiar face. Jonathan's heart lurched. He rose from his chair, crossing the hall in a few hurried steps. "What are you doing here?" he asked, voice low, panic creeping in. "This is a family situation." Selina's face was streaked with worry. I came because I needed to see you. I tried to text. You never responded." Jonathan rubbed his temples. "I've been dealing with all of this. My phone died hours ago." Eleanor spotted them and approached, though she clearly didn't recognize Selina, or so Jonathan assumed, until a look of astonishment and confusion spread across Eleanor's face. "Selina," Eleanor whispered. Selina's eyes met Eleanor's. A flurry of silent recognition and shock passed between them. Jonathan looked from one woman to the other, pulse quickening. "You two know each other?" he asked, dread forming in his gut. Eleanor swallowed hard, trying to find words. "Selina is my cousin," she finally managed, her voice trembling. The hospital corridor seemed to freeze in time. Jonathan felt all oxygen leave his lungs. He saw the fury, pain and betrayal twisting across Eleanor's features. He saw the shame burning in Selina's eyes. The three stood there, locked in a horrifying tableau of realization. A nurse pushed past with a cart, oblivious to the emotional explosion ripping through them. "You," Eleanor's voice cracked. "You're the cousin who moved away after your mother remarried. You've barely been at any family gatherings in the last decade. I had no idea you were in New York." Selina stared at the floor, tears welling. "I didn't realize who you were married to at first," she whispered. "By the time I knew, it was too late." Eleanor's face paled, her expression teetering on the edge of devastation and rage. "Too late?" she hissed. "Too late for what exactly?" Jonathan tried to intervene. "Eleanor, let me explain." "Explain what?" she interrupted, tears streaming. Her voice rose, drawing the attention of passing medical staff. "That you've been sleeping with my cousin, the cousin I haven't seen in years, under my nose this whole time." Stunned, Jonathan couldn't form words. Selina's eyes pleaded for understanding, but the moment was beyond salvage. Eleanor turned on her heels and rushed toward the ICU doors. Selina reached for Jonathan's arm. "I'm sorry," she said, voice shaky. "I should never have come. I didn't know." Jonathan pulled away. "Just don't," he muttered. "I can't handle this right now." In the ICU, a heart monitor sounded a piercing alarm. Nurses and doctors rushed in. Through the glass partition, Jonathan saw them working frantically around Margaret's bed. Eleanor stood by helplessly, her world unraveling, not just her aunt's life at stake, but her marriage and her trust in her own blood shattered. Genevieve strode over, eyes blazing with confusion. "What is going on?" she demanded. "Who is that woman?" No one answered. The swirl of heartbreak, betrayal and tragedy collided in the space of a single morning, forging a memory that would haunt them all. Margaret's condition worsened. Machines beeped ominously for hours as doctors administered medication after medication. Eleanor sat by her bedside, clutching Margaret's cold hand. Jonathan hovered in the background, unsure if Eleanor even wanted him there. Selina had disappeared, presumably unable to bear the crushing weight of what had just transpired. Finally, a doctor emerged, removing a surgical mask. One look at his grim expression told Jonathan everything. "We did all we could," the doctor said, voice hushed. "I'm sorry." Eleanor's wail echoed in the corridor, a guttural cry of anguish. Jonathan wrapped his arms around her reflexively, tears burning his own eyes. Whatever lay between them, anger, betrayal, heartbreak, this moment transcended it all. They had lost someone dear to them, and there was no going back. In the hours following Margaret's death, the family wept and consoled one another as best they could. The shock of losing a loved one mingled with the bombshell revelation of Jonathan's affair. Rumors spread quickly among the extended family. Selina was nowhere to be found, but her name now carried a scandalous weight. Genevieve discreetly approached Jonathan. "Eleanor is in no condition to talk about it now," she said. "But we all know what happened with Selina. For Eleanor's sake, maybe you should keep your distance." Jonathan nodded, voice thick with remorse. "I understand." He lingered for a while longer, ensuring travel arrangements for Margaret's remains and coordinating with funeral homes. He did what he could to shoulder burdens, though each interaction was clipped, tense. Ultimately, he realized Eleanor might be better off without him hovering. She refused to meet his gaze. Thus, in the bleak afternoon light, Jonathan stepped outside the hospital and called a car. Snow was falling softly, covering the streets in a gentle hush. He stared up at the sky, wondering how his life had collapsed so thoroughly in just a single night. Where was Selina now? Would Eleanor ever forgive him? Did he even deserve forgiveness? A text pinged on his phone. "Selina, I'm leaving. I don't know where I'll go, but I can't stay here. Please don't try to find me." Tears pricked at the corners of Jonathan's eyes. He realized it was truly over, his reckless affair, the illusions he had nurtured, and any hope of a quiet, amicable resolution. The new year had barely begun, and he already felt as though the world was caving in around him. A week later, Margaret Benson's funeral brought extended family and close friends to Boston. The weather was bleak, matching the somber mood. Eleanor stood at the front of the chapel, receiving condolences in black attire. Her eyes were red and puffy from days of weeping. Jonathan, dressed in a dark suit, maintained a respectful distance. He watched from afar as people offered words of comfort. Occasionally, someone shot him a glare, presumably aware of the scandal. Most, however, were too focused on the loss of Margaret to dwell on rumors. When he finally approached Eleanor, they stood face to face for the first time since the hospital confrontation. "We need to talk," he said gently. She looked up at him with wounded eyes. "I can't, not now." He reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "Eleanor, please," he murmured. "When you're ready, I'll—" She walked past him without a word, disappearing into the throng of mourners, his stomach twisted with despair. For the rest of the funeral and the subsequent gathering at her father's estate, he remained on the periphery, an outsider in a family that used to be his by marriage. It wasn't until later that evening, when the crowds had thinned and the estate's living room was nearly empty, that Eleanor found him. She stood at the threshold, arms crossed, face stoic. "Pack your things," she said quietly. "Go back to New York. I'll call you when I'm ready to discuss what happens next." He had no choice but to comply. There, in the hush of an evening tinted with sorrow, Jonathan saw the end of his old life. He could not blame her. He had betrayed her. He had shattered a sacred trust. Without a word, he returned to the bedroom they once shared during family visits, gathered what few belongings he had brought, and left the house. His footsteps echoed on the marble floors, each step feeling like a final goodbye. Back in New York, Jonathan felt lost. His penthouse, once a testament to his success, now seemed cold and hollow. He realized how much of his marriage had inhabited these rooms, Eleanor's books lining the shelves, her fragrance lingering in the master suite. Now, without her presence, everything echoed with emptiness. Selina was gone. The texts and calls he made to her number remained unanswered. He reached out to mutual contacts from Redwood Tech or real estate circles, but no one knew where she had disappeared. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. Days blurred into weeks. Jonathan poured himself into work, finalizing details on philanthropic projects. Though the scandal quietly buzzed among Manhattan's elite, it never became front-page news, at least not yet. People spoke in hushed tones, speculation swirling. One afternoon, a letter arrived. No return address, just his name, scrawled in an elegant looping script. He opened it to find a single page. "John, I'm safe, but I need time to heal. I didn't want our love to be something so tainted. I truly cared for you, but I cannot bear the guilt of hurting my own family. I hope, in time, you find the courage to become the man you truly want to be. Selina." He read the letter over and over, tears welling. The finality of her words was crushing. She had truly left. Everything he had known, the illusions he'd nurtured, were disintegrating. A month later, on a crisp February day, Eleanor called Jonathan. Her voice was subdued but steady. "I'm back in Manhattan," she said. "We should meet." He agreed. They chose a quiet cafe, away from the usual social circles. When he arrived, Eleanor was already seated, nursing a cup of tea. She looked fragile, her once luminous aura dimmed by grief and heartbreak. Jonathan sat across from her, his throat tight. "Thank you for meeting me." She stared into her cup. "I've been thinking a lot. About Margaret, about us, about where everything went wrong." He reached for her hand, but she didn't reciprocate. Instead, she sighed heavily. "I talked to my father. He knows about the affair, obviously. Many in my family do. They're furious, but they're also torn because Margaret adored you. Jonathan's eyes stung. He remembered how Margaret once praised him for being salt of the earth, a self-made man with a philanthropic heart. He felt like a fraud. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said. "I just want you to know how sorry I am." Eleanor's voice trembled. "Why her, John? Why my own cousin?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Do you realize how humiliated I feel? It's not just an affair, it's a betrayal by my own blood." He swallowed hard, chest tight with remorse. "I didn't know who she was at first. She never used the Benson family name. She told me her father was someone else entirely. By the time we realized it was complicated, but I have no excuse." She closed her eyes, silent tears slipping down her cheeks. For a long moment neither spoke. The gentle hum of cafe chatter seemed a world away. Finally, Eleanor inhaled, steadying herself. "I've contacted a divorce attorney." Jonathan's heart seized. "Eleanor, wait. Let's try to fix this. I know I've done something unforgivable, but we built a life together. We've done so much good with the foundation. Don't throw it all away." She shook her head, tears brimming again. "I can't stay married to someone who broke my trust in such a fundamental way. There's no going back. I'm not even sure I want to try." His vision blurred with tears. A wave of panic surged. But beneath that panic was a strange clarity. He deserved this. He had lied, cheated, and tarnished the vows they made. Now he had to face the consequences. "All right," he whispered. "If this is your decision, I won't fight you. You deserve your peace." Her lip trembled. "I appreciate that." They sat in silence a while longer, tears mingling with regrets unsaid. Despite the heartbreak, there was a faint sense of relief in the air. The moment marked the beginning of an honest reckoning, one that might allow them to move forward on separate paths. Before they parted, Eleanor looked him in the eyes. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Jonathan. But if I can give you one piece of advice, stop running from your feelings. Face the truth of who you are. Maybe then you won't hurt anyone else." Divorce proceedings began quietly. Within weeks, lawyers were drafting settlements. The media caught only faint whispers after all. High society divorces were not uncommon. But the real heartbreak lay within the quiet drama of two people splitting a life they had shared for over a decade. Word reached Jonathan that Selina had returned to the West Coast. Some said she was in San Francisco, others claimed she had left the country. He couldn't be sure. One spring morning, Jonathan sat in his penthouse office, scanning paperwork. The final divorce papers had arrived. He took a deep breath and signed them, heart twisting. This was it, the end of the Harrington marriage. That very afternoon, he received a call that shattered him. A friend from Redwood Tech phoned with terrible news. Selina had been found unconscious in a small apartment in Oakland, an overdose. They weren't sure if it was intentional or accidental. Regardless, she was gone before paramedics arrived. Jonathan sank to his knees, phone pressed to his ear, the walls seeming to close in. A wave of devastation swept over him. He recalled her last letter, her desire for him to become the man you truly want to be. And now she was gone, their story cut short. Over the next days, the pieces of Selina's life came into tragic focus. She had struggled with anxiety and depression long before meeting Jonathan, it turned out. The affair, the discovery that Eleanor was her cousin, the ensuing guilt, all had likely contributed to a downward spiral. Jonathan flew to Oakland in a fog of grief, quietly settling her outstanding bills and arranging a proper memorial. It wasn't his place, perhaps, but no one else stepped forward. He felt an agonizing responsibility, a last duty to the woman he had both loved and destroyed in equal measure. Standing beside the small gathering at her funeral, only a handful of acquaintances from her real estate circles, Jonathan wept openly. She had died alone. He hated himself for not being there to help. Weeks passed, blending into months. The tragedy of Selina's death weighed heavily on Jonathan. Eleanor heard the news through mutual friends, and though she harbored deep hurt, she sent Jonathan a single text. "I'm sorry for your loss." They were already officially divorced, but that small gesture reminded him of her inherent compassion. Despite the immense wealth and power Jonathan wielded, he found himself unmoored, haunted by the ghosts of his choices. He retreated from the public eye. The Harrington Foundation continued its philanthropic efforts. Under Eleanor's more direct leadership, she had chosen to keep the Harrington name for the foundation's branding, though she quietly rebranded some initiatives to distance them from Jonathan. Amid the swirling guilt, Jonathan clung to his philanthropic ventures as a lifeline. He founded a mental health awareness program in Selena's name, funneling millions into research, outreach and support for people battling depression and anxiety. The program quietly credited SP with inspiring its creation, though few in the public recognized the initials. It was his private homage, an attempt to ensure something good came from his colossal mistakes. Then, one autumn day, nearly a year after that fateful New Year's Eve, Jonathan found himself strolling through Central Park. The leaves were a medley of gold and red, swirling in the crisp breeze. He paused at a small pond, watching families feed ducks. A subtle yearning tugged at him, longing for genuine connection, for the simplicity of a love untainted by lies. He thought back to his youth when he had been poor but hopeful, forging big dreams without losing sight of who he was. That boy, he realized, would never have betrayed the values his parents instilled. Somewhere along his climb to wealth, he had lost pieces of himself. The affair, the tragedy, the divorce, all had forced him to confront that truth. A phone vibration jolted him from his reverie. It was Harold Cunningham. "John, I know you've been lying low, but we could use your presence at the Redwood Tech Mental Health Summit. It's next week. Your insight would mean a lot." Jonathan agreed, and with that step he began to re-engage with the world, not as the smug, unstoppable billionaire, but as a man humbled by loss, seeking redemption through meaningful actions. At the Redwood Tech Mental Health Summit, Jonathan shared his personal story, carefully omitting certain names and details, but candidly discussing the dangers of neglecting emotional well-being. His voice trembled at times, but he pressed on, determined to be honest. The audience, many of whom knew him as a successful philanthropist or businessman, listened with rapt attention. A quiet hush fell when he concluded, "In the pursuit of success, I lost sight of who I was. I hurt people I cared about. And I learned, far too late, that no amount of power or money can fix the damage wrought by betrayal and unaddressed mental health struggles. If I could give one piece of advice, it's this. Choose authenticity. Confront your emotions, your fears, your desires before they spiral into something uncontrollable, and never neglect the hearts around you." A smattering of applause followed, growing in intensity. Jonathan felt tears threaten to fall again, but this time they carried a sense of catharsis. People came up to him afterward, sharing their own battles with depression, anxiety, or fractured relationships. In those raw confessions, he found a renewed sense of purpose. Toward the end of the day, Harold approached him with an admiring nod. "That was brave, John. People see you differently now, more human." Jonathan offered a sad smile. "I see myself differently too." A week later, as Jonathan tidied up some final paperwork in his penthouse, he was preparing to sell it. Feeling a need for a fresh start, his doorbell rang. To his surprise, it was Eleanor. She looked poised but somewhat nervous, clutching her purse with both hands. "Can I come in?" she asked. Jonathan stepped aside, heart pounding. The last time they had spoken in person was the day she told him about the divorce. She walked into the living area, where the city lights dazzled through floor-to-ceiling windows. "I heard about your speech at the summit," Eleanor began. "Word gets around. I just wanted to say that I'm proud of you, for owning your mistakes and trying to do something positive." He nodded, not sure how to respond. She took a seat on the sofa, eyes traveling over the half-packed boxes. "You're moving." He shrugged. This place has too many memories. I'm not the same man who lived here a year ago. She studied him, as though seeing him clearly for the first time in a long while. Good, she said simply. Change is painful, but sometimes necessary. They spoke quietly about Margaret, about Eleanor's father, about how the foundation was faring. At one point, Eleanor reached out to touch a worn hardcover book on a side table, an old volume of poetry they had once read together. A subtle smile touched her lips. "I want you to know," she said softly, "I'm no longer angry. Hurt, yes, but I've realized carrying resentment only poisons me. I need to let it go. And I wanted to tell you that I forgive you, Jonathan. Not for you, necessarily, but for me." Tears glossed his eyes. "Thank you," he managed. "I don't deserve it, but I appreciate it." She rose to leave. "People can change," she murmured. "I hope you continue to." As she stepped out the door, Jonathan felt a calm settle over him. Their marriage was over, but perhaps a seed of understanding or friendship might someday grow. For the first time in many months, he felt a hint of peace. In the months that followed, Jonathan sold the penthouse and purchased a modest townhouse in a quieter neighborhood. He continued to oversee his philanthropic commitments, expanding the mental health program he had named for Selina. Occasionally, he would meet Eleanor for coffee to discuss joint charity ventures, always polite, somewhat distant, but forging a respectful rapport. He never stopped mourning Selina, never ceased to regret the pain he had caused Eleanor. But he chose to funnel those regrets into positive action. He funded scholarships, volunteered at shelters, and spoke openly about the importance of emotional health. Over time, tabloids lost interest in his private life, turning their gaze elsewhere. For Jonathan, that was a blessing. He preferred to do good work behind the scenes, no longer fueled by the spotlight that once defined him. One cool December evening, nearly a full year after that fateful New Year's, Jonathan found himself at the Harrington Foundation's Winter Gala. Eleanor had invited him to attend, though the dynamic was markedly different this time. Cameras still flashed, but he stood on the periphery, content to let Eleanor take center stage. During her speech, Eleanor acknowledged the Foundation's new directions, the expansions in microfinancing, and the mental health initiatives. She thanked the donors, the volunteers, and everyone who has made this mission possible. Then she paused, looking out over the crowd, her gaze lingering briefly on Jonathan. "In life," she said, "we learn through adversity. We learn that ambition without compassion can lead us astray. We learn that pain can become a catalyst for growth. And we learn that resilience, authenticity, and connection are the pillars that hold us up when everything falls apart." The audience applauded. Jonathan's eyes misted, a wave of gratitude and sorrow mingling. He understood in that moment that their old life was gone, but a new one had emerged, built on hard-won lessons and a commitment to genuine empathy. Sometime later, as the city geared up once more for New Year's festivities, Jonathan Harrington stood on the balcony of his townhouse, reflecting on the year that had passed. He no longer hosted opulent galas or flaunted his wealth as a badge of success. Instead, he had discovered a quieter, deeper sense of purpose. He gazed at the fireworks blooming in the sky, kaleidoscopes of color and light against the darkness. For a fleeting moment, he closed his eyes and whispered silent thanks to Eleanor for her final act of compassion in forgiving him, to Selina for teaching him that love without honesty leads to tragedy, and to the memory of the boy he once was, who believed in building a world that was better, kinder. His phone buzzed a text from Eleanor, inviting him to join a small after-party with some close friends from the Foundation. A faint smile curved his lips. Perhaps he would go, not as the center of attention, but as a friend and collaborator. It might take a lifetime to fully mend the damage he had done, but at least he was on the path. In that moment, with fireworks reflecting off the skyscrapers, Jonathan felt a glimmer of genuine hope. Out of ruin, he was forging something real, an authentic life shaped by resilience, connection, and the hard but necessary truths that had shattered his old illusions. If there was one lesson he carried forward, it was that tragedy could become the seed of transformation, lighting the way toward a deeper humanity he had nearly lost in the pursuit of ambition. And so, with the new year arriving once again, Jonathan Harrington quietly stepped away from the balcony, ready to face whatever came next, not with arrogance or deceit, but with hard-earned humility and an open heart.